questions and answers or comments. And I think anything is fair game. We, I guess, even particularly encourage questions from people who are new or self-identify as new. And because it turns out well, there are real advantages to being a beginner, that it's helpful to be reminded of.
I don't know if this is a silly question, but I'm wondering if there's an opinion on why it seems easier and more calming to meditate in a setting with all the practitioners together than at home, even though you know that there's other people meditating at the same time as you?
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I'm going to repeat the question for the streaming. It was, is there an opinion about why it seems more calming or maybe easier to meditate in a group than by yourself at home? I don't think I've heard an official answer on the subject, but I certainly have an opinion. And I guess I'd put it this way. It's because what we do and who we are and our presence matters. And I think to me, it's a manifestation of what it often gets translated as interconnectedness. And it's really one of the most lovely and accessible and palpable manifestations of that truth. And interconnectedness, it's also often called or translated as dependent arising, which alludes to the Buddhist notion that, I suppose the simple way of putting it is Buddhism doesn't have a conception of the individual as a real entity, like I don't exist in Buddhism. And this is a way to experience this truth, because you sit down by yourself and try to do something, try to keep your mind on your breath or whatever it is you're trying to do. and is quite hard. But put yourself in a room full of like-minded people trying to do the same thing, and suddenly the same task seems easier. Not always, but often. And I guess it's, well, my own teacher would say, it's because you're not doing it. You think you're doing it. But that's not really true in the way that you're thinking it is. So, curious if Zopa or anybody else has any observations on the qualitative difference between practicing alone versus with a group of people.
Well, I was wondering, Kate, what your experience is alone or with the group. What do you experience?
Well, when I'm alone, it takes a lot longer to calm the thoughts. So they seem to pop up a lot more than in the group. It might be that there's more direction here with, kind of setting up the meditation better than I maybe do at home.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought of a couple of things. I mean, my experience too is it's usually easier here, and somehow it feels like dropping deeper happens. And I think it's exactly what Erik's saying, this interdependence. Everything we think, do, or say affects everyone. It's kind of daunting when we really take that on. Everything we think, do, or say affects everyone. So then I was thinking, well, if I really understood interdependence deeply, it wouldn't matter to me whether I'm in a cave, 1,000 miles away from any practitioners or right next to a group. And on an ultimate level, that's true, but we're always having to work on the relative level, starting where we are. So when I go up to my room in this house, right upstairs by myself, it's quite different than being down here with, 25 of you. So that's the relative truth. I'm not Milarepa. Milarepa knows the ultimate truth and lives in it. So it doesn't matter to him if they're ever here or where. And, we keep practicing someday. We can achieve that kind of state of mind, but I don't know about you, I'm not there yet. I need my Sangha buddy friends. Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, that is a lovely illustration of taking refuge in the Sangha.
Yeah. It's, many of you have been coming here, 20 years, 15 years, even more. You still come. And, we need each other, especially in these busy times when we can get pulled away from Dharma so easily. It's wonderful to have that group of, I like what you said, like-minded people with the same goals, practicing the same methods to get to the goals. It's hard to climb a mountain all by yourself, but if you go with the Mazamas, you can do it. They have the right equipment. I went up to the top of Mount Hood with them. If I'd been by myself, I'd be dead. So, there you go.
Michael.
So I guess my opinion is it's harder to jump up and run from my cushion if I'm sitting here. And then sometimes I sit at home, and I really do. I want to run from my cushion, you know. And so one of the first things I do is look at a picture of my teacher who is laughing, and that's always a good message, you know. But here it's sort of like if I really wanted to move and get up and leave, I'd be embarrassed, you know. So you know. So also it's just sort of there's more than one seat here when we're all seated together, and there's kind of an accumulative groundedness, I guess, for me that really helps with that. Yeah. That's an opinion.
Thank you. Marcy.
Well, I want to extend that question a little bit to what your experiences are, thoughts are about personal solitary retreat versus group retreat. And I guess I've noticed, I mean, I do both, probably, but, I mean, I do both, but I notice, like, when I do solitary retreat that I definitely go into my own habits, you know, more. I feel like maybe they're just more apparent, but I feel like I have a tendency to indulge maybe more in my habits than if I'm with a group. I don't know if you have anything to say about the differences between those or the benefits of one over the other or whatever.
Indulge in your own habits. Is that a good thing or
Both.
Good
Good and bad.
That's what happened.
I think I probably think more about myself and my own stuff on solitary retreat, and in group retreat I'm getting teachings, and I feel like I'm getting filled up with other Dharma things or
Well, they're both helpful, and in my experience, the conditions of the solitary retreat and the conditions of the group retreat show you different things about your own mind to work on. So I didn't do a solitary retreat ever until the 1-year retreat. All my retreats for 19 years had been in groups. And that's just how my Gelug teacher did it. Lots of retreat time, but you were always in the group, in silence, in the shrine room, eating together, sleeping in dorms together, but in silence, which was really interesting to be so physically close, but really keeping very, very good silence. So the 1-year retreat was the first time I was in a little cabin for however many hours a day. Many, way too many for myself. Myself really struggled with that because I'm quite an extrovert in a way. And it was really good. It really showed me, like I wrote to my teacher, and one of the things I said is, wow, I'm really seeing what I can carry myself and what I can't, you know, and I didn't know that because I was always in the group. I didn't know what the group was carrying for me, with me. And now it's like, okay, you carry this. This is what you can carry. This is what you're not able to carry. And that was fine. I mean, you know, I had to work through criticizing myself about that or driving myself, but finally saying, oh, now I see, you know. So I go to the interview with the teacher and say, here's what I see I'm carrying, here's what I see I'm not. And then they say, okay, good, you see that. Try this, try that. So that's my experience. And I think the main thing I want to share, it is so important to do a retreat in your lifetime. It's so important to do one a year, even if it's a long weekend, even if it's a week. And it won't happen unless you commit to it, say it's important, tell your family, I'm going to work towards this, please help me do it. Tell your boss, I need to take this week off or whatever. And plan it 6 months ahead. And then do it, whether it's solo or group. It's good to start with, some guidance, not just to go to a cabin by yourself, because you probably really will do your old habits. Take your potato chips and movies and such. And then you'll come out of there going, wow, I did the same thing I did every vacation, so what good was that? So I don't know, is that helpful? Is it getting?
Yeah, because I think a lot of us have limited opportunities to do retreats. So sometimes it's like, well, I'm trying to weigh what to do,
I think start with guided for sure, like things that KCC offers, things that Travasti Abbey offers. It's really good to be with a group if you don't know how. Again, the metaphor of climbing a mountain is really useful. You want to know how to get to the base camp, and what do you do when you get there, and what equipment should you have, and when you start slipping down, how do you use your crampons, you really want to know. So that's why we have teachers, that's why we have senior students. I think in America, it's a little hard for us to follow people. I'm just talking about myself here, but there's a certain kind of pride. I already know. I should figure this out for myself. I will do it myself. There's a kind of goodness in that, a pioneer spirit, But, there are people who know some things we don't know. If we already knew how to lead ourselves, we would have led ourselves straight to enlightenment. And I don't know about you, but I'm not there. I keep making the same mistakes. So it's really helpful to have senior students who have done more, to talk to teachers, to notice, gosh, I'm doing the same thing over and over. Because we can only lead ourselves as far as we already know. But there are things to be known beyond what this eye knows. Of course, you know that because you come here, but it's really important to make that explicit. And then to look at, for me, a lot of rebellion it was. I only saw when I got to the monastery a lot of rebellion, like I just don't want to follow anybody. And it's a kind of a what do they call it, conceit of the eye? The eye, not our eye, but I. The conceit of the self, which thinks it knows everything and is the most important and is the center, and actually needs to be confronted, and retreats confront that. So you have to decide, do you want to keep doing what you do already, or do you want to shift? And retreats is a really good way to do that. Also, daily practice is a great way to do that. So, let me get off of the soapbox. Yeah.
I just wanted to add a comment to what you said, if that's okay. A long time ago, I was in a recovery program, and you're supposed to have like a guide for your recovery in this particular program. And I would go through these guides pretty quickly, because at one point someone finally said to me, if you're not using your guide, if you're not listening to your guide, there's no point in having one, right? And I finally got it, like I was measuring everything against what I believed and what I thought, and finally it dawned on me, my little logic, I was good at logic, so logically that made a lot of sense, right? There's no point in having some guide if I don't actually take some of their suggestions. The other thing I wanted to mention is one thing that I was taught and I don't think this is unique to the United States, but I think it's certainly emphasized here, is that you don't ask people for help, not because it's an ego thing, but because I should take care of what I can take care of myself and not burden other people. So it goes along with the ego thing, you know. It's the other side of the coin. Like, don't ask other people for help if you can do it yourself anyway. And bad on you if you're burdening other people. So that's another little thing that I had to overcome to some extent, and don't know if I've completely overcome that. Because I do have to balance, okay, what can I do for myself, and what do I really not know and need help with. So anyway, just a comment.
Thank you. So I have a Lama Michael story about that. And I think he told me this story in an interview, so I don't know if he's probably told it before, but and I don't remember the name of the teacher, but it wasn't Kala Rinpoche, it was another of the Tibetan Lamas. And he said they were standing on a street corner, and the Lama turned to him and he said, "You know, you're really so selfish." And Lama Michael was like, "What are you talking about? You know, I like, my whole life is trying to help other people. You know, that's all I want to do." And he said, "Right, in your world, you're the only one who accumulates merit." And Michael was like, because he really put his finger on well, something that was really true. And it gets to the nature of helping and fixing versus service relationships. And I've been really conscious of this lately because, well, I've been trying to integrate my Dharma practice more into my clinical practice as a doctor. And you know, because people had sort of been asking me for years, "Oh wow, how does your Dharma practice influence what you do with patients?" And I almost never talk to them about it, you know, or I never talk about the Dharma explicitly in that way. And but the reality is there's a limited number of people who can take advantage of what I have to offer. And I am so grateful to the ones who can. I'm like, yes, I've been working on this for 20 years, and to actually be able to offer it to somebody is such a blessing for me and such a relief. And the opportunity is so rare that it's really not clear at all to me who is receiving the greater blessing. My experience is that it's me. I don't know how they feel about it. what a blessing it is to be listened to. What a privilege it is to be allowed to serve another person. Yeah, so thank you for reminding me of that story.
Before I came to Buddhism, I had done a number of years as a legal aid type lawyer and some other social service settings. So I felt like I was really good, a really good person. And I think I was, well, we all are at our core. But I was reading a book early on in Buddhism by Genla Rinpa, and he had this part in there which really struck me. He said, if you're in a helping profession and you think you're really good, basically you've got an ego problem that you're going to have to work on. I'm paraphrasing here. This was what the meaning came up to me from what he said. You're going to have to work on in Buddhism because you've got this compassionate part, which is great, wonderful, springs from the natural Buddha nature. I want to help, I want to give. It's quite natural for us to do that. And then we often have built up our identity on it. So I am the helper. You are the helpee. And therefore, I'm just a little bit better than you. I'm just a little higher than you because I have it together and you don't. Or whatever the story is. There's often a story that goes. And that really struck me because it was like, oh, I thought I had arrived, to use our thing this morning. I thought I had arrived. I'm a big helper lawyer, legal aid. I didn't go out and make a lot of money and work for the corporations, and so I'm extra good. And as I pondered what he said, I kept seeing it. And then the best lesson that helped tear that down, although I still have it, you can see it as I'm helping you. Yeah. But the best lesson I had was when I got breast cancer. And it was like suddenly I was the helpee. I could not help but be the helpee. And I did not like it. My I did not like this. And it touches on what Miriam rose up. I didn't want to take help. That felt humiliating. And there was a lot of pride that I worked through in that illness, ton of it, just not being able to. So had to, redefine the self. Of course, we always redefine it instead of just deconstructing. But it was quite helpful, that opening. I don't know who I am anymore if I'm not the big helper. Now I'm just, laying in a bed and everybody's got to do everything for me. Yuck. And having to, work through all that and come to a good place. So that was quite helpful. So I've always tried to look at that all the time. And it has to do with every identity we build, You can look at your identities. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that, I. And we're just building it. And every teaching in Buddhism is that I is the core culprit. Patrol Rinpoche says that I see you. You pull your eye out and say, I see you, and you're the problem. Nobody else is the problem. It's my sense of I, and it's a false I. That's the problem with it. It's false. It's a hallucinated I, but we follow it around. We do have a nice set of aggregates running around the world, take care of them, but this I, I will stop talking. It's good to make fun of it. It's just a silly thing. It stumps us all the time.
Michael?
So this is just stirring a lot of stuff.
Good.
And you said something earlier about the difference between serving and helping. Okay. And I think, this is, you just unpack this a little bit, in that way. And so I guess in my own work, I realize that what our ritual says is, we practice to benefit others. And I keep, in my own work, try to take the word help out and use benefit. And that helps, that helps a little bit. But how, and I suppose there's no way that I'm ever going to be able to really serve without the I being there somewhat, But I don't know, I'm just wondering if you might, unpack that a little bit more. So.
Let's see if I can find. I'm trying to find what Rachel Naomi Rimmons written on service. So I think she's the one who really articulated the difference for me. And if I can't find it, I'll have to try to conjure her language, which I don't like to do because her language is so impeccable. But I can take a shot at it. So she comes at it the same way that Zopa did, is that she's aware when she's trying to help or to fix someone, that there is sort of automatically created a power gradient. And that sometimes subtly and sometimes not so subtly elevates the person who's helping and fixing, and in balance actually lowers the person who is being helped or being fixed. And she said that in our attempts to help and fix others, we can inadvertently wound them by putting them in this situation. And she referenced her own experience of being a young person with Crohn's disease. And she said, well, on the one hand, I'm very grateful to the people that took care of me in the hospital and that gave me this ileostomy, as a young woman. But she said, I don't think they're aware of how also wounded I was by those interactions. And she said that service relationships are different from helping and fixing. And one way that they're different is that service relationships are between equals. And they are always bidirectional, mutual. That's the word I'm looking for. Service relationships are always mutual. And in trying to explain what a service relationship looked like, she said, well, it can look a lot of different ways. In teaching about service relationships, Frank Ostaseski shows a video of a race that takes place in San Francisco, and it's a cross-country race that sort of goes all over these ridiculous obstacles and hills, and the race is done by two people, one of whom is completely blind, and there's people running all of. I mean, it's the sort of thing that there's very few people that could really do it anyway, because of the obstacles and the slipperiness and just you see people falling right and left, and they're like people zipping all over. But to imagine a blind person doing this, like running forward without being able to see, with all of these, and a very anxious person on his shoulder saying, okay, rock, okay, jump, okay, slow down, okay, left, okay, someone's coming on your right. It's an extraordinary thing. The blind guy looks totally happy through the whole thing, too. He has a big, stupid grin on his face. The other guy looks totally stressed out. But when Rachel tries to put it into words, she says, well, service relationships are about the person in me revealing myself or making myself known to the person in you. And the practice that supports service relationships, she calls generous listening, which you all have heard that from me many times, but it doesn't hurt to say it again. And here I do have her words. So the practice goes like this. When we listen, we're usually thinking. We may be deciding if we like or dislike what is being said, if we agree or disagree with it, if we believe it or not. We may be listening competitively. We may be listening with an agenda. When we're in helping professions, we're trained to listen for what is wrong and concerned with whether or not we know how to fix it. In listening generously, we do not do any of this. We just listen in silence, not to analyze or even to understand. We are listening simply to know what is true for another person at this time. And when we do this, we often enable someone to recognize what is true for them for the first time. I think the one way to start to turn your helping relationships into service relationships is to always remind yourself of what you said, Michael, which is that your intention is to be beneficial. And then the other piece of it is to understand and to remind yourself that you don't know how this person is supposed to be. You really don't. and maybe the third piece is trusting that even though maybe it looks like how they are is not how they're supposed to be, trusting them enough to reveal how they're supposed to be.
And that trust in itself can be a way of empowering.
It's phenomenal. You know, I mean, I experience it in my own teacher. No matter what problem I bring to him, he sort of smiles at me and gives me the same answer every single time. And it's such a relief.
I think the trust is in our own Buddha nature and the Buddha nature of the other one. And when the infrequent times when I can experience that, then there's no helper and no helpee. And a lot of people in here that I know are in helping professions. I'm kind of looking around, or have just been in situations with their families where they're really in the helper position. And this, it's such a wonderful experience when I think what it is the reduction of the I, you know, and all of a sudden it will seem like, well, I'm the learner. You know, I thought I came in here to help, and I'm learning way more than I'm teaching, so to speak, or helping. So I was just thinking about this last class on the 6 paramitas, and one of the most important thing about the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections, which is bodhisattva activity, is to hold in mind there's no separate actor, action, or one acted on. So in generous listening, there's no separate listener, words being said, not separate. And to actually perfect the perfections, that's the mind we try to generate through our calm abiding and insight, not separate. So there's no one to show off, protect, be the anything, you know. It's quite a relief. It's quite a relief from the way most of us get taught in our helping professions to be like hyper-responsible, way over-responsible, you know, the one that's supposed to fix something. Good heavens, we can't even understand the thing, much less fix it. So it's quite a relief to get to that place every so often of serving. I think serving's a step there, generous listening's a step there. And then more directly in Buddhism, it's no separate I, no separate action, no separate other acted on. Just a flow. Besides, who could we help if nobody's there? That really proves it. I can name myself Helper of the Year. No one shows up. I can't do anything. So there you go. If you all don't come, Erik and I wouldn't be up here doing anything. You know, so not separate.
Can I just pursue that a little bit more? I
Please.
am in a helping profession, and I have patients who come into me. I have more knowledge than they do and more skills than they have, and they're looking to get better, or their children better, when they come in to see me. So how do you balance what you just said with why I'm sitting in that room at that time?
There's nothing wrong with helping and fixing. Like if you can help and you can fix, in particular when people have come for your help or to be fixed, then that is awesome. And you can do that, and don't ever think there's anything wrong with that. That's not the point. And I think that there are times when it's better to be an expert. Like there's a time where that's good, and there's a place for that. And there's a time when it's maybe more helpful to simply be a human being and be present. And often it's the times where you're trying to help and you're trying to fix, though you can tell is not working. Or you have no idea what to do. Those are particularly good times.
Yeah, and I've sometimes said with clients, I have no idea what to do, and something really interesting happens, you know. But the thing I like to add to, I totally agree everything Erik said, and just add what I do for myself when I'm getting caught in the big I fixer, which means I'm less helpful. Automatically I'm less helpful because I'm less available. I like to remember I'm the expert about this set of things. I learned these things, I learned them well. They are the expert about many things that I don't know, and especially their lives. This I am totally ignorant of. So that kind of, again, equals the playing field, you know. And that's really important, to know what our ignorance is a good thing.
Yeah, thank you for putting your finger on. So I've been doing this with patients, actually, is I'll tell them, well, I'm an expert in palliative care, but what my interest is in helping to benefit your quality of life. And I tell them, and I understand that quality of life is very personal and it's different from person to person. And so I tell them, I'm depending on you to help me understand what is quality of life for you. Yeah. And the way that you can do that is by kind of telling me your story. And I'll just sit here and listen, and as you talk, I think ideas will come up. And so that's my articulation of it. So you just describe for me what I've been starting to do increasingly. All right. You can dedicate the merit.
By this virtue have quickly realized Mahamudra and established all beings without exception in that state.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.